Now we're going to do an example of both the row function and the column function, and we're going to talk about how they can be used to help us with other formulas, such as VLOOKUP. The row formula is basically a way to actually identify the row number that corresponds with a certain cell. So for instance, if we go down to click a cell down here, and we set the formula equal to row, open paren, and then we'll pick the cell A1, for instance, close paren. The answer to that is going to be 1. And all that means is the formula tells Excel to go up to the cell A1, and it tells it to read off the row number that corresponds with row number 1. Since cell A1 is in row 1, and row 1 is the first row within the spreadsheet, then the answer is 1. So if we were to do row A2, the answer would be 2, because it's the second row down. If we were to do row A600, then the answer would be 600. If we were to do row D600, then the answer would still be 600, because it goes and it finds cell D600 and reports the row number that corresponds with that particular cell. The column function does the same thing, except it does it horizontally rather than vertically. So if we do equals column of, again, cell A1, the answer would be 1. If we do column of A2, the answer would still be 1, because the column is A, and A happens to be the first column in the array in the spreadsheet. Now, if we were to do column B2, the answer would be 2, because it looks at cell B2, and it realizes that it is in the second column, column B, and therefore it reports the column number 2. If we were to do column Z55, the answer should be 26, because Z is the 26th letter of the alphabet, and it happens to correspond to the 26th column from the left. So how do we use these row functions and column functions? Well, to answer that question, first we're going to do an example with a VLOOKUP formula. Let's say that down here at the bottom of our sheet, or we could even do it on another sheet if we wanted to, we want to have basically the same information here, but we want it to be for one supplier, whichever supplier we happen to select. So we're going to report out, copy all of this information, copy, and then down here we're going to do paste. Okay, so we have the same information, and then we're going to say supplier A, and if we select or type in A as the supplier, we want it to do a VLOOKUP formula to have it report all of the corresponding information that ties to supplier A based on this table up here. So we would do a VLOOKUP formula equals VLOOKUP, open paren. The lookup value would be the supplier, A, and we're going to anchor that so that it doesn't drift when we drag the VLOOKUP formula across to the right, comma, the table array starting up here and going all the way to the end of the data. We will anchor that as well, both the column and the row for the entire array, comma, and then we want the column number that we want it to report. So the very first column, number 1, happens to be the supplier itself. So we want it, since we're doing the unit price right now, we want it to go over to column 2. So we type in 2, and since we want an exact match, we're going to do false, close paren, and it gives us the unit price. We can come up here and select the unit price up here, and click this little Format Painter hot button up here on the menu bar, or the one of the toolbars, I guess. Click that, and then come down and click here, and it automatically updates the formatting of the cell to equal the source formatting that we selected from. Then we can drag this formula across, but we see that we have a problem because in each case that we drag the formula across, it does not change the column reference number in the VLOOKUP formula. Now in the other tutorial that was provided, the user went in and manually changed each of the formulas from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, etc. Well, what if we had 45 columns of data that we wanted to report, and we didn't want to do that manually? There's an easier way. One way is we can go up and we can actually put a header in front of this row. Actually, we could put it at the top as well. So we're going to start right here with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Actually, that's probably not the best thing to do. We're going to start over here and do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we can go back to this VLOOKUP formula, and instead of typing in the number 2, we can actually reference this cell up here, which happens to have the number 2 in it, and leave it unanchored so that when we drag this formula across, it will increment over to 3, to 4, to 5, and so on, so that the VLOOKUP, each time it drags across, will report out the next column over. So we push enter, it still gives us the 497, and if we drag it across, you'll notice that all of the numbers now update automatically. We have a problem with the formatting because when we drag the formula across, it actually took the dollar signs with it. There's two things that we could do. One is we could select all of this data up here, click the Format Painter button again, and select all of this data down here, and it will match it. Or we can click this after we pasted or dragged the formula over. There's this little icon down here that showed up. We can click that, and we can say Fill Without Formatting, and there it will only drag the actual formula rather than the format. So you can see now if we go in and type in supplier D, all of the information will update automatically based on the VLOOKUP formulas referencing this table up here. Now, what if we don't want to have this header row? Well, that's where we can use the row function or the column function as a proxy for actually having a number in here. So do you remember back in this first cell, we actually referenced in the VLOOKUP formula cell D2, which had the number 2 in it, because we wanted the VLOOKUP formula to look at the second column over. Well, instead of doing that, we can actually replace cell D2 with a column function. So instead, and remember, in this case, we want it to give us the number 2. And we used cell D2 to give us that. Instead, we can actually do the column function, open paren, and the column that would, a cell that would give us the number 2 would correspond to column B. So we can do B1 or B2 or B3, or it doesn't matter the row number as long as we have the B correct. Close paren. And so this portion of the formula right here will equal the number 2. So what we can do is push enter, and notice that it gives us the same result that corresponds to supplier D. Now, since we have used the column function instead of referencing cell D2, and we've left the reference of the column function B1 unanchored, it also will drag across. So if we drag it here, and again we do fill without formatting, and we go to the next one, notice that it incremented to column C1, which would result in the number 3. Column D1, which would result in the number 4, etc., etc. So that's one, perhaps the most advantageous reason for using the column function. The row function can be used in the same way, going vertically rather than horizontally.